I'm very lit. This deep dive podcast is based on my 2024 article in EMDR International Association's Go With That magazine. The podcast you're about to hear is entirely generated by Google Notebook's artificial intelligence, meaning no humans were actually involved in the broadcast. Then again, no humans were injured or killed either, so all the ideas you'll hear are mine. All the hyperbole belongs to the AI. If you're interested in consultation or training, I offer both. I have a training coming up in March in Salt Lake City, 2025. If you're interested, check out my website for details. That's barrylitmft.com. So without further ado, I now turn you over to our robot overlords.
Welcome to another deep dive, and this one might just shake up how you think about couples therapy. We're going to be exploring how EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, can really add a whole new layer to working with couples.
It really is fascinating stuff. We're going to be using Barry Litt's work today. He's a therapist who's super into combining EMDR and couples therapy. He's got some amazing insights into both, what's possible and where the issues are.
Yeah, and he doesn't shy away from those. He gets right into the challenges therapists face when they're trying to blend these two approaches, which is where we'll start today.
Yeah, he lays out three main challenges. The first one is what he calls epistemological. Essentially, it's about how we make sense of the problems we're trying to solve.
Okay, I think we need to unpack that a bit. Couples therapy, right? Traditionally, it's rooted in this idea of systems theory, that the couple itself is the patient, not the individuals.
Exactly. It's like we're looking at the forest, not just the individual trees. But when you bring EMDR into it, which a lot of times focuses on individual trauma, things get a little messy,
Right, because now you're trying to heal those wounds, those individual wounds,
Yeah.
but you're also working with the dynamics of the relationship itself.
Yeah. And that's where that epistemological challenge pops up. Therapists can get caught in this balancing act, trying to stay true to that systems theory, but also, seeing that each partner has their own needs.
Litt, he has this example where therapists might offer EMDR to a partner who doesn't actually need it, just to kind of keep things,
Yeah.
balanced. But that could actually end up overlooking what that person actually needs.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation to be in, trying to figure out, are we working with the individual? Are we working with the couple? Where does the real work need to happen?
It really highlights how important that assessment is, that initial assessment, really getting to know each partner's, unique experiences and their needs.
Absolutely. And that leads us to the second challenge. Litt talks about modal challenges. This is all about the different modes of therapy, individual, couples, family, all that.
So even though you have a couple in the room, you might not stay in couples therapy mode all the time.
Exactly. You can shift, you can address individual needs while still being aware of that relationship context. Litt really emphasizes that everyone in that room is a client. The mode of therapy should be flexible enough to really respond to what each person needs.
That makes sense. So how does the therapist actually pull that off? It seems like that could get really complicated.
Lynn has this term for it, multi-directed partiality. Basically, it means the therapist has to advocate for each person in the room, but also, keep in mind how it all impacts the relationship as a whole, almost like being a diplomat, for the couple's inner world.
I can imagine that takes some serious skill.
Oh, it definitely does. You've got to be able to hold all those perspectives, at the same time and navigate some potentially tough ethical questions too.
And then there's the third challenge, countertransference. That's where the therapist's their own baggage comes into play.
Right. And Litt focuses specifically on how a therapist's own childhood, specifically their experience with parental conflict, can influence their work with couples. It can influence it without them even realizing it.
So you're saying if you grew up in a home with a lot of fighting between your parents, that could impact how you as a therapist approach conflict in couples therapy.
Exactly. He talks about these pathogenic relational configurations. They can really create problems both for the therapist and the couple, like parentification. That's where a child is forced into being the caretaker for their parents.
So let's say a therapist, experienced parentification as a kid. They might unconsciously avoid dealing with conflict in couples therapy because it brings up those old feelings, right?
Yeah.
Like they're responsible for their parents' emotions all over again.
Yeah, classic example. Or, maybe they'll overemphasize one partner's needs and kind of neglect the other. It's like they're recreating that split loyalty dynamic they experienced as a child.
Wow, that's really insightful. That makes you realize how important self-awareness is for therapists and supervision too, especially when you're working with couples.
Definitely. Now, before we jump into Litt's five-step method for actually, weaving EMDR into couples therapy, we got to talk about another big idea: pathological dependency. This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What exactly is pathological dependency?
Well, remember how we were talking about, those rigid roles couples get locked into, like the ego aid thing or that constant race to the bottom to see who's needier?
Yeah, those sound familiar.
Lit argues that those are prime examples of pathological dependency. It's where partners become so overly reliant on each other, almost like their identities are merging, and it actually ends up holding them back from growing as individuals.
So it's like they're clinging to each other out of fear or insecurity, not because of, genuine love and support.
Exactly. They might feel, incredibly close, but that closeness is actually based on this unhealthy dependence that keeps them from really connecting as separate people.
And that's where Litt's five-step method comes in.
You got it. He's got this really practical framework for identifying those dependency patterns and working with them using EMDR.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's dive into that five-step method. Where do we begin?
Well, the first step is it's really about spotting those not so healthy relationship habits, those ones that might feel, close and connected, but they actually end up draining each person's strength. Like those ego aid things you mentioned, where one person kind of shoulders all the responsibility and the other one just completely avoids it.
Right, it's like they're almost feeding off of each other's, dysfunction.
Exactly. And let's first step, it's about shining a light on those patterns. Help the couple really see them for what they are.
So, okay, you get those patterns out in the open. What happens next?
Step two, that's where EMDR starts to come in. This step is about, picking out those negative thoughts and feelings, even bodily sensations that get triggered in one partner when those dependency patterns show up again.
So, like, if one partner always feels overwhelmed and kind of incompetent when the other one takes charge, you would zero in on those feelings of inadequacy.
Yeah, exactly. You're helping them kind of tune in to what's happening inside them when those old dynamics come back up.
And that leads to step three, right?
Yeah.
The effect bridge.
Ah, this is where things get really powerful. You're using that heightened emotional state, and you're going to connect those present day triggers, those relationship triggers, back to past traumas.
It's like you're drawing a line from the current relationship all the way back to the root of the problem.
Exactly. And for a lot of people, this is like a huge aha moment. They realize their reactions in the relationship, it's not just about their partner, it's echoes of that old unresolved pain from their past.
Okay, so now you've made that connection, you've linked it back to past trauma. What's step four all about?
This is where the individual really starts to take ownership. They see that, their reactive behavior, it comes from that old hurt. And they make a commitment to changing those patterns.
That sounds like a big step.
Hmm.
Acknowledging those old wounds and then choosing to do things differently.
It's a process for sure, but it's also, it's incredibly empowering. It's helping them shift from feeling like, a victim of their past to being in charge of their own healing, taking an active role.
And that brings us to the final step in this method.
Yeah, step five, it's about talking about the possibility of individual EMDR therapy. So this is where you might suggest, going deeper into those past traumas to really process them and learn more secure ways of relating to people.
So it's like you're saying, okay, we've uncovered these patterns, we see where they came from. Now let's give you the tools to actually heal those wounds on a personal level.
Exactly. And it's not about, abandoning the couple's work. It's recognizing that sometimes, individual healing is what you need to build a really solid foundation for a healthy relationship.
This five-step method it's so clear, so insightful. It really breaks down that process of bringing EMDR into couples therapy in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. But it's not just about the assessment part, Let's got some really valuable treatment considerations for therapists too.
Oh, right. What are some of the key things therapists should keep in mind when they're actually, putting EMDR into practice with couples?
One of the most One of the most interesting things he talks about is conjoint EMDR.
Conjoint EMDR. What does that even mean?
So it means one partner is actually doing EMDR while the other partner is just observing.
Wait, so both partners are actually in the room during the EMDR session?
Yep. It might sound kind of intense, but Lit thinks it can be super beneficial.
Okay, how so?
Well, for the partner who's doing EMDR, having their loved one right there, it creates this sense of safety and support, and for the partner who's just watching, it can be this really powerful experience, just witnessing their partner's healing journey.
Yeah, that sounds like it can really boost, empathy and understanding between them.
Absolutely. But Lit also, he makes it clear that conjoint EMDR it's not for every couple.
Yeah.
There are definitely times when it wouldn't be a good idea.
Like, if there's a history of abuse or if one partner just, isn't comfortable with the other one, seeing them in that vulnerable state.
Exactly. Safety and trust, those are the most important things. So it's really important for therapists to carefully think about the couple's, dynamics and their history before they even consider conjoint EMDR.
Makes sense. So what other treatment considerations should therapists keep in mind?
Lida really emphasizes the importance of what he calls serial dialogues with the therapist.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that. What are serial dialogues?
It's basically having each partner talk to the therapist directly instead of, going back and forth with each other. It's about creating this safe and structured space for communication.
So instead of letting the couple get into like those heated arguments, which can, easily escalate, the therapist acts as a mediator.
Exactly. It helps prevent those unproductive power struggles and helps each partner feel like they're being heard, like what they're saying actually matters.
It sounds like a really good way to de-escalate conflict and just get them communicating in a more productive way.
Exactly. And Lit points out that this technique can also help therapists avoid getting pulled into those unhealthy drama triangles that, can come up in couples therapy.
Drama triangles, you mean like those victim, persecutor, rescuer roles that people get stuck in?
Yep, that's the one. Serial dialogues help keep those roles in check and create a more balanced and fair dynamic in the therapy.
Okay, so we've got conjoint EMDR, we got serial dialogues. What other treatment considerations does Lit bring up?
He also talks about this idea of one-stop shopping.
One-stop shopping,
Yeah.
like going to the mall for all your needs.
Not exactly. In this context, it means having the same therapist handle both individual and couple sessions.
So instead of sending them to a different therapist for individual therapy, the couples therapist works with each partner on their own as well.
Yep, that's the idea. Lit thinks this approach has some real advantages.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, it just increases accountability. When it's the same therapist working with the couple and with each person individually, it's harder for anyone to play games or try to turn one therapist against the other.
Right. It keeps everyone on the same page, working towards the same goals.
Mhm.
What other benefits does Lit see with this?
He also thinks it creates a more cohesive treatment plan. The therapist just has a more complete picture of what each partner needs and how those needs, play out in the relationship.
So it's not just about treating the couple as this one unit,
Yeah.
but also acknowledging that sometimes, people need to do some individual healing for the relationship to really work.
Exactly. And it helps prevent that splitting thing where one partner tries to play the individual therapist against the couple's therapist.
Right. It keeps everyone, aligned and moving towards that same goal, a healthier, happier relationship.
And that brings us to one of Lit's most important points, I think. This type of therapy, it has to be collaborative. The therapists and the clients, they work together to figure out what's best for each person and for the couple as a whole.
So it's not about the therapist, telling them what to do. It's about empowering the clients to really take charge of their own, healing journey.
Exactly. At the end of the day, integrating EMDR into couples therapy, it's about creating that safe and supportive space for people to heal from their past and build those stronger, more fulfilling relationships.
This has been incredibly insightful. But before we wrap up, I'm curious, what are your biggest takeaways from our deep dive into Lit's work?
I think for me, it's how sneaky those pathological dependency patterns can be. It's not always, big blowouts or really obvious power struggles. Sometimes it's those quiet ways we kind of give up our own needs, our own sense of self, just to feel close to someone.
Yeah, it's almost like those patterns, they just become so normal that we don't even see them anymore, but they're still there, slowly chipping away at who we are as individuals.
Exactly. And that's why I think Lit's emphasis on assessment is so, so important. It's all about helping those couples, helping them see those patterns, understand where they come from, and then, start to break free.
And I think his five-step method is such a great guide for doing that. It's practical, it's step by step. It's a way to integrate EMDR, that really honors the individual and the relationship at the same time.
Yeah, I really appreciate how he talks about the importance of individual accountability. It's not about, pointing fingers, blaming each other for the problems. It's about recognizing that our own past, our own experiences, they shape how we react, how we behave in those relationships.
Right. And EMDR can be such a powerful tool for working through those old wounds. It's like giving people a chance to rewrite their story, to create new ways of connecting that aren't based on, fear or neediness.
It's about moving from that I need you to complete me to I choose to be with you because you make my life better.
And I think Lit's insights about conjoined EMDR and those serial dialogues, they offer some really practical, ways to navigate those tricky parts.
Mm.
It's not about just throwing EMDR into couples therapy. It's about being thoughtful, being skillful about how you approach it.
It's definitely a delicate dance, but the potential is huge. When it's done well, integrating EMDR into couples therapy, it can be transformative both for the people and for their relationship.
It's like you're not just, putting a Band-Aid on the relationship problems. You're actually going deeper,
Hmm.
addressing the root causes and building this foundation for real connection and growth.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one thing you're going to take away from our exploration of EMDR and couples therapy?
Hmm. For me, it's that idea of multi-directed partiality.
Hmm.
It really resonated with me. It just shows how much responsibility therapists have, to hold space for both people as individuals and for their relationship, and to navigate all those needs, those sometimes competing needs, with empathy and awareness. It's a powerful reminder that everyone in that room matters. Everyone deserves to be seen, to be supported.
That's a beautiful takeaway. And I think it speaks to what makes this approach so powerful, so potentially life-changing. It's about honoring how complex human connection is,
Yeah.
acknowledging our wounds and creating space for healing and growth, both on our own and together.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've gotten some valuable insights into the world of EMDR and couples therapy.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.